The black waitress sees her childhood photo in a millionaire's house. She is shocked to discover she was the daughter he lost 20 years ago. "My God, it's me!" The words came out as a whisper from Sierra's lips as she stared at the golden frame hanging in the private hallway of the Kensington estate. Her fingers trembled, almost dropping the crystal tray she was carrying. Framed like a precious relic was a photo of her at age 5. The same shy smile, the same unruly curls, even the little blue dress she vaguely remembered. But how on earth did her childhood photo end up decorating the wall of one of New York City's wealthiest families? Sierra Jones, 25, had served champagne at dozens of high society events, but she never expected to find pieces of her lost past in a mansion where it cost over $1,200 to step on the marble floor. Raised in foster care since she was a baby, she always knew there were gaps in her history. Social workers spoke vaguely of difficult circumstances and documents lost in a fire, but never in her worst nightmares did she imagine that the answer was hanging on the wall of Mr. Harrison Reed, the same man who, 45 minutes earlier, had walked past her as if she were invisible. "Hey you! What are you doing here?" The security guard's harsh voice brought her back to reality. "Employees are not allowed in the private wings." "Sorry, I got lost looking for the restroom," Sierra lied, forcing a smile as her heart raced. She memorized every detail of that photo before walking away. Back in the main hall, her eyes automatically searched for Harrison Reed among the guests. There he was, impeccable in his tailored tuxedo, talking about his charitable foundation for underprivileged children, while the millionaires in attendance applauded his generosity. What cruel irony! The man who talked about helping abandoned children had a photo of his own abandoned daughter decorating his home like a secret trophy. Sierra watched Harrison's every gesture, every word, every calculated smile. There was something in his eyes when he spoke of second chances and broken families, a thinly veiled guilt that she recognized immediately. When Harrison casually mentioned the personal tragedy that motivated him to help other families, Sierra felt her blood run cold. Personal tragedy. She hadn't died, she had been abandoned. "Life sometimes forces us to make impossible decisions," Harrison continued, his voice heavy with rehearsed emotion. "Losing a daughter changes a man forever. Losing or discarding." In that moment, as she watched the man who was probably her biological father receive congratulations for his courage to turn his pain into purpose, Sierra made a decision that would change both their lives forever. She was going to find out the whole truth. And when she did, Harrison Reed was going to pay dearly for every lie he had told, every tear she had cried, she'd shed every night she had spent wondering why she wasn't good enough to be loved. But while everyone applauded the philanthropist of the year, no one noticed the smile that formed at the corner of Sierra's mouth. It wasn't the smile of a daughter finding her lost father. It was the smile of someone who had just discovered their enemy's weak spot. If you feel like this story goes way beyond a simple family reunion, you're right. Subscribe to the channel, because what Sierra was about to discover about Harrison Reed would make his philanthropy seem like a joke compared to the revenge she had in mind. 5 days after the event, Sierra couldn't get that photo out of her head. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the innocent smile of the child she once was, hanging as a decoration in the home of the man who should have protected her. She needed answers, but where to start? Harrison Reed was untouchable, CEO of a massive conglomerate, board member of 4 universities, and, ironically, patron of orphanages across the entire state. The man had built an empire on his own hypocrisy. That's when she remembered Frank, the veteran bartender who worked at all of New York City's elite events. If anyone knew the dirty secrets of those people, it was him. Reed? Frank almost choked on his soda when Sierra mentioned the name. "Girl, you don't want to mess with that man. He has connections everywhere." "Why do you say that?" Sierra asked, pretending to be casual as she wiped the glasses. Frank looked around, making sure they were alone in the service area. "There are rumors, old ones, about a daughter he had who just disappeared off the map. His wife died in a suspicious accident when the girl was about 6 years old." Sierra's blood ran cold. 6 years old, the age in the photo. The strange thing is that after the accident, Reed inherited an astronomical fortune from his wife's life insurance, and the girl, she was never heard from again. It's as if she evaporated. "But he talks so much about helping orphaned children." Frank laughed bitterly. "Of course he does. Nothing better to clean a dirty conscience than a charitable foundation with his name stamped in gold letters." That night, Sierra created fake profiles on social media and began investigating. She discovered that Harrison had married 4 times after the death of his first wife, always to much younger women who signed strict prenuptial agreements. All of his subsequent marriages had lasted no more than 3 years. Even more interesting, she found old articles about Eleanor Reed, her biological mother. The woman had been a children's rights advocate, fighting to reform the adoption system. The last article about her mentioned that she was investigating irregularities at private adoption agencies 3 weeks before she died. How convenient. Sierra printed everything she found and organized a timeline. Eleanor had discovered something compromising about adoption agencies. 3 weeks later, she died in an accident. Harrison inherited everything, and his daughter mysteriously disappeared. She needed more information, and she knew exactly where to get it. Brenda Morales, a retired private investigator who frequented the cafe where she worked in the mornings. "Brenda, I need a favor," Sierra said, pouring the extra strong latte the woman always ordered. "From the sound of it, I'm guessing it's not a small one. I need information on someone important." Brenda studied Sierra's face for a long moment. At 68, she had developed a keen instinct for recognizing when someone was desperate for justice. "How much can you pay?" "I can work for you. Cleaning, organizing, whatever you need." "Interesting." Brenda smiled. "It's been a while since I've had a real case. Tell me everything." As Sierra told her story, Brenda took notes in a worn notebook. When she finished, the investigator looked at her with respect. "Sweetheart, you're not just looking for your father, you're hunting a predator who may have killed your mother." Over the next few days, Brenda began digging. What she discovered was even worse than they had imagined. Harrison hadn't just abandoned Sierra, he had forged documents declaring her dead in the same accident that killed Eleanor. "Look at this." Brenda showed her the printed papers. A fake death certificate. A statement that the body was never found. "Your father received life insurance money for you, too." Sierra felt nauseous. "He profited from my supposed death?" "Over $750,000, Brenda confirmed. And he didn't stop there. He used the tragedy to create the charitable foundation. His entire image as a man who overcame grief through charity was built on the lie of your death," Brenda continued, leafing through the documents. "There's more. Eleanor had hired a private investigator 3 weeks before she died. She suspected Harrison was selling children through an illegal adoption ring. The investigator disappeared shortly after she did. It was then that Sierra realized Harrison's cruel genius. He hadn't just gotten rid of an unwanted daughter and an inconvenient wife, he had turned their double murder into social and financial capital. "There's something else," Brenda said, handing her a blurry photo. "Eleanor didn't die in the accident. She died 3.5 hours later in the hospital, fully conscious. And before she died, she said something to the nurse about protecting the girl from the monster." Sierra felt tears burn her eyes. Her mother had died, knowing her daughter was in danger. But if Harrison thought she was a dead girl and buried, he was about to find out that some ghosts come back to haunt you. Brenda handed her a folder filled with documents. "Everything you need is here. But Sierra, this man is dangerous. If he killed your mother to get the inheritance, he won't hesitate to hurt you." "He won't hurt me," Sierra replied with a calmness that surprised even herself. "Because he doesn't know I exist, and that would be her greatest advantage." While Harrison Reed continued his life as a lying philanthropist, believing that all his secrets were buried with a daughter who never died, Sierra planned the most dramatic reunion of his life. She had already decided how she would do it. At his foundation's next charity event, ironically, a gala for orphaned children, Harrison Reed would discover that death sometimes has a very particular way of collecting its debts. The question hanging in the air was simple. What happens when a man who profited from his daughter's supposed death discovers that she is not only alive but knows everything? The answer would come soon, and it would be more devastating than Harrison could ever imagine. The Reed Foundation's annual gala for orphaned children was in full swing. Harrison was on stage talking about second chances and the transformative power of a father's love, while the Millionaire guests applauded his inspiring generosity. Sierra, dressed as a waitress, moved through the crowd, a calm determination in her eyes. She circulated the room with a tray of champagne and a smile that held 22 years of pent-up anger. Today, Harrison Reed would finally meet his daughter. "Ladies and gentlemen," Harrison continued his rehearsed speech. "As someone who tragically lost a daughter, I know the pain these children carry. That's why our foundation—" That's when Sierra approached the stage and took the microphone from an assistant. "Excuse me, Mr. Reed, can I ask you a question?" The silence cut through the air like a knife. Harrison looked at her with ill-concealed irritation. "Miss, shouldn't you be serving drinks?" "Of course, but as the daughter of orphans, your speech touched me deeply." Sierra stepped onto the stage, ignoring the murmurs from the audience. "Especially when you said you lost a daughter. Can you tell us more about that?" Harrison forced a smile. "Well, it was a personal tragedy. I'd rather not go into details." "That's a shame." Sierra turned on the microphone. Because I have some very interesting details about your lost daughter. Harrison's expression changed instantly. His eyes narrowed as he studied Sierra's face for the first time. He really saw her. First, she didn't die in an accident. Second, you abandoned her after killing her mother so you could get her inheritance. Third, Sierra smiled. She's right here in front of you, and she has some questions for Daddy. The blood drained from Harrison's face. You can't be Sierra Eleanor Jones, or rather, Sierra Eleanor Reed, your daughter, whom you declared dead to collect over $750,000 in life insurance. The audience exploded in murmurs. Harrison tried to grab the microphone, but Sierra stepped away. Ladies and gentlemen, how about we get to know the real Harrison Reed? Sierra pulled out a thick envelope. Here are the fake death certificates he created for me and my mother. Here are the life insurance receipts he received for our deaths. And here, she held up an enlarged photo, is Eleanor Reed's autopsy report, showing that she didn't die in the accident. She was poisoned 3.5 hours earlier. Harrison staggered. That's absurd slander. Is it? Sierra pointed to the large screen behind the stage. Then explain to me why you have my childhood photo hanging in your private office. The photo appeared on the screen, the same one Sierra had secretly photographed in the mansion, but now everyone could see the inscription on the back. To the most amazing dad in the world, I love you, Sierra. The audience fell silent. 22 years, Harrison. Sierra turned to him. 22 years I grew up thinking I was worthless, that my parents had died and abandoned me. Meanwhile, you used our tragedy to build your image as a philanthropist, making millions in donations that never reached the real children. Brenda appeared at the side of the stage, signaling that she was recording everything. But you know what's even funnier, Sierra laughed. You hired me to serve champagne at the gala for the foundation you created on the back of our fake deaths. What a cruel irony, isn't it? Harrison tried to recover. You have no real proof of any of this. I don't, Sierra smiled, a chilling resolve in her voice. Press people, did you get the files I emailed you 5 minutes ago, including the recordings of Harrison admitting to his lawyer that he got rid of the problem of his wife and daughter? The journalist's cameras began flashing wildly. Harrison looked around, watching his reputation crumble in real time. You, he whispered, finally understanding the extent of the trap. You planned all of this. Of course I did. You taught me that revenge is best served cold. And Dad, Sierra savored the word. 22 years is a long time to cool. The audience began to rise and leave, many calling to cancel their donations. Harrison stood on stage alone, watching his entire life crumble as his dead daughter looked at him with the same coldness he had shown her 2 decades earlier. Oh, and Harrison, Sierra stepped down from the stage. You'll be thrilled to know that the FBI is on its way to arrest you for insurance fraud, murder, and money laundering. They said my evidence is more than sufficient. As the sirens began to wail outside, Harrison Reed finally understood that he had seriously underestimated the daughter he thought he had buried forever. But as the handcuffs closed around his wrists, one question hung in the air. After 22 years of lies, betrayal, and revenge executed with surgical precision, was it possible that a family destroyed by greed could find some kind of redemption? Or are some wounds too deep to heal, even when justice finally prevails? 6 months after Harrison Reed's arrest, Sierra sat in the office that had once belonged to the man who had tried to erase her existence. The plaque on the door now read, Eleanor Reed Foundation, Executive Director, Sierra Jones. The FBI had frozen all of Harrison's assets after discovering that only 15% of the foundation's donations actually reached the orphaned children. The rest financed the luxurious lifestyle of a man who had built his empire on corpses and lies. Ironic, isn't it? Commented Brenda, now her official assistant, leafing through the financial reports. He used her death to raise millions, and now you're using those same millions to do the work he pretended to do. Sierra smiled as she signed a check for the construction of the 7th new orphanage. The money confiscated from Harrison would be used for exactly what he had always promised, but this time for real. The transformation in Sierra's life had been radical and public. The waitress who served champagne to the elite was now on the cover of national magazines, such as The Daughter Who Came Back from the Dead to Seek Justice. And Forbes magazine had named her one of the 40 most influential people of the year. TV shows were vying for exclusive interviews about how she had exposed one of the biggest charity fraud schemes in the country. You've become more famous than he is, laughed Frank, the former bartender who now worked as the new foundation's event coordinator. Harrison Reed spent decades building a reputation, and you destroyed it in 25 minutes. And what a destruction it had been. News about Harrison came regularly from the prison system, each piece more devastating than the last. His former associates had filed lawsuits to recover the $9.5 million they had invested in the fraudulent foundation. His 4 ex-wives had broken their confidentiality agreements and were publishing tell-all books. Married to a Monster, Life with a Psychopath, and How I Escaped a Killer. The exclusive golf club where he was once a fixture had revoked his membership. The exclusive club he once frequented had removed his honorary member plaque and renamed the annual tournament that bore his name. The university had removed his honor from the library building. Even the church he attended asked him not to return after his release. More importantly, Sierra had found her real family. During her investigations, she discovered that Eleanor had a sister, Laura, who had searched for Sierra for years before giving up, believing her niece was truly dead. "You have her eyes," Laura had said at their first meeting, holding up an old photo of Eleanor. "Your mother would be so proud to see who you've become." Laura had become more than an aunt. She was the family Sierra never knew she had. Together, they had created a complete file on Eleanor, documenting her work as an activist and her fight for children's rights. The investigation Eleanor had begun into corrupt adoption agencies was now being conducted by the FBI, resulting in 58 arrests and the closure of 15 illegal agencies. Eleanor didn't die in vain, Laura said during one of the many nights they spent organizing her sister's documents. "She planted seeds that you've made blossom into an entire forest." Harrison, meanwhile, faced a very different reality. Sentenced to 28 years in prison for murder, fraud, and money laundering, he had lost not only his freedom but also his entire fortune, which had been confiscated for reparations. His high society friends had vanished into thin air, and his reputation was irrevocably destroyed. The letters he tried to send to Sierra always came back unanswered. In one of them, which Brenda had intercepted, he wrote, "I was young and stupid when this happened. If you really are my daughter, please forgive me. I can explain everything." Sierra had torn up the letter without finishing it. Forgiveness was a luxury that murderers did not deserve. But the true measure of Sierra's success was not in the headlines or financial reports. It was in the 900+ letters she received each month from children whose lives had been transformed by the new foundation. "Sierra, I got a scholarship to study engineering at MIT," wrote 17-year-old Mark. "Thank you for teaching me that our past does not have to define our future." "You inspired me to become a child advocate," said another letter from a 15-year-old girl. "I want to defend children like you defended your mother. Thanks to the foundation, our family is finally reunited after 9 years apart," wrote a mother. "My children are home." In an interview on CNN, 7 months after Harrison's arrest, Jake Tapper asked Sierra if she felt anger toward her biological father. She thought carefully before answering, "Anger is a luxury I can't afford." Harrison Reed taught me, unintentionally, the most valuable lesson of my life. That our origins don't define our destiny.